Greetings. I am Brenda Youmas, President of Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Epsilon Omega Omega Chapter in Macon, Georgia. Tonight we are here honoring caregivers and our National Caregivers Impact Day by having a roundtable discussion to talk about caregivers, what caregivers do, and just to show our appreciation. You know, all the caregivers in the world deserve special attention and respect for their selfless service to the ill, to the elderly, to the disabled, and sometimes just to the lonely. Whether you're a professional or whether you're a volunteer, you deserve our appreciation. And today, as we're celebrating this day, we're going to acknowledge that caregivers have impacted our lives in so many facets, in so many ways. And as such, you deserve this special recognition. The ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Epsilon Omega Omega, express our sincere gratitude to all caregivers in our deep core of our heart for the blessed things you do. You are a blessing to humanity. And we do pray that and we hope that you receive just as much kindness, just as much love and support as you give to others. And by doing this, we're telling the world through this event tonight that caregivers are important, and also through the event we'll tell others about what role caregivers play. And it doesn't all necessarily have to be through the healthcare or through our fire department, our police department, but it's just through others who care for someone else. So welcome tonight. Enjoy the program. And I'm going to turn it over to Belinda Hodge, who is a registered nurse, by the way, a member of Epsilon Omega Omega Chapter, and the chairman of this great program we presented tonight on our National Caregivers Day. Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you, President Youmas. Greetings, everyone. President Youmas, we appreciate those words of welcome. During the month of November, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, under the leadership of our international president, Dr. Glenda Glover, and the international program, which has a theme of exemplifying excellence through sustainable service, recognizes caregivers on Caregivers Impact Day. There are 5 targets in the international program. Caring for the Caregivers is an initiative of Target 2, Women's Health Care and Wellness. Target 2 focuses on critical healthcare issues. To implement the Caregivers Initiative, Epsilon Omega Omega is proud to present the Caregivers Impact Day Roundtable Discussion webinar, which is dedicated to the physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being and self-care of each caregiver. The roundtable discussion is comprised of a special guest moderator and some outstanding professional panelists. We are grateful for this educational opportunity to demonstrate our support and appreciation to all caregivers. So at this time, let me tell you about our special guest moderator. Leah Fleming is an award-winning radio host and correspondent. You can hear her greet you weekday mornings from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the Georgia Public Broadcasting Morning Edition from the National Public Radio News. Morning Edition is heard throughout the state and beyond at gpb.org and on the GPB apps. Leah is a familiar voice on public radio, having hosted morning and afternoon programming in Atlanta, Albany, New York, Jacksonville, and Miami, Florida. Leah's goal for Georgia Public Broadcasting's Morning Edition is to offer the listener a unique experience of news, culture, and trends of interest to African Americans and other diverse groups in the greater Atlanta area. Leah believes that listeners, no matter what their ethnicity, find value in content that explores and celebrates all cultures. Leah joined GPB in 2012, following 6 years at WLRN Miami Herald News in Miami, Florida, where she served as All Things Considered anchor before being named Deputy News Director. Prior to her time in South Florida, Leah worked as Morning Edition host at WABE Public Radio in Atlanta, Georgia. There, she was acknowledged for her work, including an award from the National Association of Black Journalists for her interview with professional boxer Laila Ali. Leah has also worked at NPR in Washington, D.C. as a producer and served as a mentor with NPR's Next Generation Project. Leah was raised in New York and she holds a Master of Science degree in Communication Arts. And Leah is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. I present to you Leah Fleming.
Thank you so much for that. And good evening. First, allow me to recognize my beautiful sorority sisters, the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I was actually honored to be a member of the Epsilon Omega Omega Chapter when I lived in Macon before relocating to Atlanta. And so I feel like I'm coming home, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to see all my beautiful sisters this evening. I'd like to thank President Youmas and Vice President Allen, and I'd like to thank Belinda Hodge, Co-Chair of Women's Healthcare and Wellness, for inviting me to serve this evening. And secondly, I'd like to join with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in really honoring all of us who are caregivers tonight. There are some of us who don't even know we do that because we just keep it moving and we just keep taking on more and more, especially women, especially Black women. We know that this is the case. So for all of us who are caregivers and who serve in that special way, I do take a moment to honor all of you. So let us get this conversation started this evening. And after the conversation, we are going to open it up for questions and feedback. And really, I think the goal for all of us tonight is to walk away with kind of an action plan of how we're going to care for ourselves while we are indeed caregiving and doing all of the many things that we do in our lives. Joining us tonight to lead us in this discussion are three esteemed professionals. And we're going to hear from Dr. Vernessa Bowles first. Dr. Bowles is a licensed psychological associate and family advocate. She attended FAMU, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University in Tallahassee, Florida. Dr. Bowles received her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology. She has a master's in science from Florida State University. And most importantly, she is the mother of a 14-year-old named Trinity who triumphs over cerebral palsy. So she knows a little bit about caregiving and giving out a lot of love. And so we welcome Dr. Bowles this evening, and you may begin.
Thank you so much, Leah, and good evening to everyone. I am honored to be on the panel. I'm honored to have been asked to come and participate, and I'm joining you guys all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am originally from Athens, Georgia, and I have connections with some of the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha through the AME Church. But I would like to put a plug in that I am a lady of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, but we're all working together. So I'm honored to be here. And I'm so glad that there is a day set aside to honor our caregivers because Leah and Brenda, you all said it best, that they deserve honor, they deserve applause. It's a difficult job. And I look at this position from two seats. As a psychologist and a mental health therapist, I work with people who are caregivers. And as the parent of a special needs child, I am a caregiver. So I do want to just kind of to put it out there of what a caregiver is in my mind. These are individuals who are taking full care of people who are incapacitated or handicapped in some way, or just need kind of full-time care. So that's who I'm thinking of when I'm speaking of caregivers. Generally, it is a family member or a friend. In these days and times, we're aging, our parents are aging, and caregiving is really a conversation that we all kind of need to have, because according to the research, the numbers are growing, and in the next 10, 15, 20 years, there will be a need for more caregivers. Someone in your family, it could be a spouse, it could be a parent, it could be a child. And my personal story was, I had a child while I was in my PhD program. She was born prematurely. And about 3 years after she was born, she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and she has never walked. So she's always been in a stroller wheelchair, and now she had her 15th birthday a couple of weeks ago. We're in a power chair, so it's kind of like teaching a teenager how to drive. So it's a little anxiety provoking. But I know the role of the caregiver when you have to take complete and total care of another person who is not able to physically do that for themselves. As has been stated before, a lot of times caregivers are primarily women. I would say probably 60 to 75% of caregivers are females, and we do the physical work. We're bathing, we're dressing, we're feeding, we're doing hair. Our male counterparts are usually providing more of the financial support when caregiving comes into play. I can personally say that caregiving is an emotional and a physically difficult thing to do. As I said, my daughter's 15, so she's about 100 pounds easily, and I am having to transfer her and lift her and help her get dressed. So it's physically draining, as well as just the emotional toll of kind of watching someone grow and being aware of things that they can and cannot do. So from a psychological perspective, I do want to spotlight and say that caregivers are at a higher risk for some psychological difficulties just because of the stress involved. There's a higher chance of depression, anxiety, social isolation, and even some physical, and my doctors will talk about that later, I'm sure, some physical effects of caring for someone else. So my angle would be to make sure that as a caregiver that you are taking care of yourself and watching for signs that you're becoming stressed. I know that it's been talked about before. There's this superwoman syndrome. And it's, when Black females, we feel like, oh, we can do it. Just keep adding it on. Give me more. I'm fine. I'm okay. I can do this, 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 and this. And it will at some point catch up with you. And you have to take inventory to make sure you're not getting overloaded. So some signs of caregiver stress or becoming overloaded is when you become more consumed with worry and stress and anxiety, when you find yourself more fatigued and tired than normal. And all of these things are compared to your normal. So if you're normally, I get up at 6 and I can go until 5 p.m. and now I get up at 6 and I'm tired at 2, then your normal has been altered. If you're finding your differences in patterns of sleeping, you're sleeping too much or you're not getting enough sleep. Sometimes it shows up in weight gain. You're gaining a lot of weight, you're becoming more sedentary, as well as irritability. And sometimes I think, as a psychologist in African Americans, there's a lot of irritability that we put on other things. And sometimes that irritability is anxiety and it's stress. And it's coming out as being irritable and having a short fuse, when really, if you dig a little bit deeper, you probably are anxious and a little bit overwhelmed. But I also do want to say that there are positive aspects to caregiving as well. I definitely feel a sense of purpose. I feel connected to my daughter. I feel needed. And I have built within myself a lot of resilience, a lot of strength through things that I never thought people ask me all the time, like, well, how do you do this? And you just do it. I would say that God just gives you the strength to do it. I mean, I was 9 months pregnant. I was in a PhD program. I had a baby early. I finished with her. She walked across the stage with me. You just do what you have to do because you have to do it. So I definitely see that I have become more resilient. I'm a woman of faith, and I feel like being a caregiver has built up all of the fruits of the spirit in me. I'm a lot more patient. I'm a lot more kind. I'm gentler. I notice things, and I try to be encouraging to other parents, other caregivers, and just give them the encouragement that I know we need. So I don't want to talk too much because I know we have some other people on the panel as well, but I guess my final thoughts would be from a psychological perspective is to yourself while you're taking care of others and taking inventory as to what you need as a caregiver and being okay with accepting help and doing some things for yourself. Because I know for a long time, I felt like I got to be super mom and I got to take care of her and I can't leave her with anybody and I got to do everything. And I'm coming to a place now where it's okay for me to have a moment, for me to get some respite care and, you know, go to the mall or go get my nails done or go get my hair done. It's okay. So I would tell all the caregivers, it's okay to have a moment, and then you can get back to what you were doing.
All right, thank you so much. All right, our next speaker is Nicole Gaither. She's also, she's an RN and a BSN and is employed with Middle Georgia Regional Commission Area Agency on Aging in Macon. And the Area Agency on Aging provides connections to resources and access to services for older adults and people living with disabilities and caregivers. Nicole's position as the Aging Services RN and Health and Wellness Coordinator is dedicated to facilitating programs which promote living well, and I love this part, aging well, and helping caregivers thrive. And so, Nicole, we welcome you to share some thoughts with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Middle Georgia Area Agency on Aging, and I certainly appreciate Dr. Bowles' segue into accepting some help and looking for the resources that are available to make caregiving just a tidbit easier. I know it is a hard job being a caregiver. I also am a caregiver, so I am in the same seat of caregiving as some of you all. And so I come with it from both a professional as well as a personal perspective. So today, just want to go over some information about our Area Agency on Aging, let you know what resources are available. First, I want to make note that this is a statewide program. We have 12 regional offices. So even if you're listening or have family outside of the city of Macon, the Middle Georgia area, there are other area agencies on aging state and nationwide. We cover the Middle Georgia area, which is 11 counties in the Central Georgia, from Putnam County across to Monroe County, down 75, all the way down to Hawkinsville area and across 16 back to Twiggs County. So we cover a large geographical location just in case some caregivers wants to know specifics of where they can look for services. Just want to highlight a couple of our programs that we have that are available for caregivers. We have a website, just in case you need it. It is Georgia Health Matters. That's Georgia Health Matters. That is our website that lists all of our health and wellness programs. On this website, you'll find programs that help with disease self-management topics. And so, as we mentioned, a lot of people are caregivers, but they also, we know that 60% of older adults or 60% of adults have chronic conditions themselves. So one part of being a good caregiver is caring for yourself. And so if there's interest that you may have on disease management, how to manage those chronic health illnesses that we have, diabetes, high blood pressure, chronic lung conditions, all of those health problems that we are challenged with during the day, there's a disease management program set aside for that. It can be either in person. Right now, we've switched to virtual because of the pandemic, but you can also take classes or look for resources and information online. Another category that is very prevalent for especially our older adults is a category about falls. And so we want to make sure that if you're caring for someone and you notice that they're becoming unstable with their gait and having trouble with their stability, especially lower extremities, and then also want to do a little something to keep them mobile and active. They may not can run a marathon or go to the gym, but there are programs that are available to help increase their strength and flexibility. And so we offer programs all in the category of that, and those programs can be anything from what is called a matter of balance, which starts very sedentary. They start in a seated position, and then we build up their strength all the way to our newest program, Tai Chi, and the one that we've launched out this month and will relaunch again in January is called Bingo Size. So we know that a lot of people enjoy bingo, and so it's the fun of bingo with some physical activity components. And then just to move a little forward, which is the topic that we came for today, we have lots of resources for caregivers. We have a two-tone way of getting support for caregivers. One, which be a virtual Powerful Tools for Caregivers series. It's a 6-week self-care Saturdays is what we have going on right now. Caregivers can call in or Zoom in with us and get caught up on some self-care tips, how to relieve stress, how to improve communication with family members. So we want to highlight that program. And then for those who may need longer types of supports, we have a program called Care Consultation. Lots of times we know that caregivers cannot break away. We have busy schedules, and so we can't get away to go to a class or even sit for a long time for a virtual workshop or a seminar. But we do have telephonic assistance that is available in our office. So we just want to encourage everyone. Help is available, as Dr. Bowles had mentioned. So just give us a call, reach out to us at the local area agency on aging. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. And our next speaker is Dr. Dwight Owens. Dr. Owens has a BS in biology from Morehouse College and an MD from Health Science Center at Syracuse for the medical doctorate. After obtaining his MD degree, he attended Mercer University in Macon to complete an internship in family medicine and then returned to Syracuse to complete a formal residency training in psychiatry. Dr. Owens is board certified in adult and general psychiatry, and he is here with us now, Dr. Bowles, or Dr. Owens, rather.
Good evening. Thanks for having me, the wonderful sisters of AKA. I wanted to first take this time to thank Brenda for inviting me to be a part of such a timely subject and topic. When we talk about caregiver burnout from the medical perspective, I am a psychiatrist, so I look at basically 3 parameters: the mental, the physical, and the emotional. We look at those that are caregivers. We talked a little bit about caring for their special needs children, our aging parents, and sometimes we have family members that have suffered maybe a stroke or a major or catastrophic illness, and then they become dependent on us. But there are 5 kind of critical areas I want to kind of talk about when we begin to look at burnout. The first one is financial. We are living in a time now where all of us who are maybe in the 6th decade may want to consider some long-term care insurance. The co-pays, transportation to and from, whether it's physical therapy, occupational therapy, gets to be kind of laborious and it gets to be costly. So there's a financial part of this actual burnout. Then there's the compassion piece. In our community, we see compassion becomes very important, taking care of our parents, our grandparents, our children, those that need us. And sometimes when we think about breaking away, that could be looked at or frowned upon as others as being disloyal or not committed to your family member. Then there's this thing called caregiver role strain. Some people still have to work. Some people still are married. Some people still are part of sororities, fraternities, other things. And you really get into a point where you're just actually strained, and because you can't do anything but that care. A lot of times when you're caring for when you talk about infection control, when you're in a home setting, you can control what comes in and what goes out. We are in the COVID pandemic, and a lot of people chose to keep their parents at home because if you took your parents to the nursing care facility, that was isolation. And we do know that isolation can also lead to premature death in some of the elderly. The next thing is the physical toll. I don't know if anybody's ever had to lift a patient. That's a lot of weight. And as you begin to lift them, there's muscle strain. As we tend to become more seasoned, or our own aging processes, our joints began to have arthritic changes. So you have that physical toll on the body. That's a part of the caregiver burnout. And the last part of that caveat medically is isolation. And too much isolation can lead you to, of course, depression. And then it can also lead to generalized anxiety and some other kinds of feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. So those are the 5 kind of overviewed categories when we begin to talk about caregiver burnout. But let's talk about the stages. There are 3 stages of burnout. Everything is in a progression. The first one is just caregiver stress. And I think that's what we're talking about, caregiver stress. Now, some of the signs of that, you get agitated, you can't sleep, you're forgetful, you're feeling overwhelmed, you can't find your keys, you go out to the car, you lock your keys in the car, you get to the grocery store, you forgot your bank card, and you're frustrated. That's the first sign. And you really start thinking, I got too much on my mind. And so then you have to take that deep breath and begin to process. And oftentimes I'll teach my patients about taking a hard stop. Sometimes you have to take a hard stop in the middle of the road, stop sign, stop, wait a minute, hold up, and breathe deeply. That's that first sign when you feel yourself getting stressed. There are 3 types of insomnia. One, you can't get to sleep. You lay there at night, everything that goes on that day, every medical appointment. Did I pick up the right medications? Is there a prescription at the pharmacy? All of these things are running through your mind. Then you wake up in the middle of the night, you wake up 2 or 3 o'clock, you can't get back to sleep. And by the time you get back to sleep, it's time to get up. There's that middle insomnia. And then that's when you wake up at 4 o'clock every morning, knowing you got a whole full day ahead of you. That's that terminal insomnia. But each of these can lead to something called EDS, which is called excessive daytime somnolence. And when you have that leads to a lot of errors in the workplace and accidents on your job. The next one is caregiver burnout. All right. So you go from stress to being burned out. So how do you know you're burned out? Well, you start being late for meetings, late for work, late for church. There's decreased sexual desire. That then affects your marriage and your relationship. You begin to neglect your responsibility. Your nails are brittle. You haven't had your nails done in about 4 or 5 months. Your hair kicked up in the back. Things are happening. You're not able to take care of your just your regular old person hygiene. That's when you know that you're becoming burned out. It's becoming exhibited externally. And third part of that stress is when you have compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue to me is very dangerous. We are now in a period where when you look at compassion fatigue, you also are knocking on the door in some instances of COVID dysphoria and COVID anxiety. We've been locked in the house for about 2 years. We are getting out, but there are still some fears associated with the pandemic. We are still in the pandemic, and there is still some death aligned with the pandemic. But compassion fatigue, what is that, Dr. Owens? Well, hopelessness. It's like, I love mom, but I don't know what to do anymore. I've done all I can do. I'm taking her to an appointment. She doesn't want to eat. My sister's not helping. My brothers don't come over to help. They come over for an hour or 2 on Sunday, and I'm just stuck here all the time. And I'm still trying to work, still trying to take care of my kids. So you become hopeless. Then you start asking yourself, what meaning is there to my life? You don't want to leave mom and dad. You don't want to leave your child, but it's like, I haven't been to a sorority meeting in 8 months. I haven't even been to church because when it comes to Sunday, that's the day that I have to prepare the meals for the week because I've got to work. So that's meal prep. Then you start having these headaches. Now there are these cluster headaches, but you get them for 4 or 5 days a month, then they go away. Then there's attention headaches that come across the back along the trapezius muscles. So you start getting these headaches. And initially, one Advil, one Aleve takes care of it. Then you go to 2, but you got to be very careful because you get up. And then you think you're having migraines, but you're actually really having tension type headaches because of the amount of stress. And the stress is now getting a physiological response in your body. Remember, 80% of the manifestations of psychological disease are manifested in the body. So what I mean, alopecia, hair loss, that's stress. Stomach issues, you got a nervous stomach, diarrhea, that is stress. Your nails get brittle, that is stress. Heart palpitations, that is stress. So a lot of times what we see and what we feel, you go to the doctor and you're really going to the physical doctor, but they're going to see you to come see me, the psychiatrist, because basically the etiology of your disease is your stress. Then you ask yourself this wonderful question, hey, I just want to drop out of life. That's why, and we've heard it happen in our community time and time again, the person taking care of the ill person is the one that dies. Wow. Have you ever heard that before? The person taking care of the sick person is the one that dies. And guess what's going to happen? The person that you were taking care of is not going to be far behind, because what happens is there's nobody to take up the slack. So I'll give you all that bad news, but there is good news. You have to be able to look at what you can and cannot do. Every policy that has Medicare, you got to dig down in that policy, and you're going to find there's home health aides, there are other kind of resources, even in the Medicare policy. But none of us really read those extra pages. But you have to call on the nurse, the discharge planners, the people at the hospital, the people at the OT places, occupational therapy places. Ask questions. If you don't know, call the Department of Aging in your particular community. There are resources, there are help. You're going to have to get help. You cannot do this alone, especially if you are the primary caretaker and there's not a team of 3 or 4 people. Once you find out what resources are available, put those resources in place. Also, just yesterday, good friend of mine, a nurse that's in great leadership, but her father, who's ill, he's blind. He doesn't want to sell his house, but guess what? As long as he owns property, it's going to block some benefits. So you have to make some difficult decisions. If there's property that's there, you may need to take that property and sell that property to take care of mom and dad. The next thing, you want to interview all of your caregivers. Who is going to be taking care of mom? Who's taking care of my special needs child? You must do a background check. You must do a background check. You must do a background check. I have to say that to you because you don't want anybody touching mom, touching your kid, and you got to find it on your dash cam. So I say that to say there's hope. I know it kind of sounds kind of sad, but there is hope, but you just have to put things in place from the model to help you do what needs to be done in order to take on the challenge of what you're doing as a caregiver. Thanks.
Thank you. So Dr. Owens, we'll start with you. I'll ask a few questions, and then we want to hear from the larger community, any questions that they have. But I'll start with you, Dr. Owens. You talked a lot about what stress looks like in mental health. Is there something tangible that you can tell people to do in the middle of that, if they can identify with the headaches and they don't even know how to begin to, reach out to someone like you? Is there something that you can advise people to do to just, find some relief right now? Is there a breathing technique?
Well, first I tell them to come to the webinar, look at the webinar that we're doing today. There are a lot of resources online. Forums such as this is a great forum. This is a great opportunity. And I'm hoping that we're sharing this with the general public. I tried to put it on my Facebook page, but you didn't give me the link, Belinda, you give me the link. We need to share this webinar with people. So what happens is, once we do this tonight, we need to share it on our pages, Because what people will do when they have insomnia, they will go, President Youmas, and they'll look and they'll see that, hey, they're talking about me. And they may not come forward to the actual seminar, but later on, they'll look for the resources. And there's a rumor that people of color don't come to psychiatrists, but that's, my phone rings all day and all night. It's just they're looking for a competent and confidential psychiatrist, somebody they can talk to, and they won't hear their business all over the community. Want somebody who's smart. Then you can ask yourself some questions. You can go online to WebMD, and you can take a test on depression. And if you take that test and that test is positive, you need to go to your doctor. Because the thing about depression is, I have to say this, depression is a medical illness. It is not some figment of an imagination. It is a very deadly disease, and the amount of suicide completion in the last 60 days has gone through the roof. So you can go online, look for resources. You can take some tests on WebMD. You can ask questions. The sorority tonight, this is a great forum. We need to like it, we need to share it and get it out to as many people. Every sister in the chapter needs to share this to their page and begin doing small things, because you will find that people are very, very visual, and they'll look for that link. And then hopefully at the bottom, I don't know who's the chair of the committee. I think Belinda's the chair of the committee, that there'll be a link that's at the back that tells you where you can go to in the chapter to get more information or get resources.
Okay. So is this something that depression, can it be prayed away?
Well, I'm not trying to plug anything for myself, but I wrote a book this year called Depression in the Pews. And what it really helps to attack the stigma that in our community, we see depression as something that we can shout out. But in my book, I talk simply about the fact that this is a mental illness, and this is a medical problem. There are actual biological substrates, there are changes that take place. And if you have a trained pastor who has the credentials to kind of seek it out, he will tell you what you need to do. Now, first thing, we do therapy. But sometimes if you're thinking about taking your life, then you're gonna have to go a little bit further than therapy. So depression is a medical illness. And so I have to say that because all psychiatrists are medical doctors. And I say that because when you talk about praying it away, for a long time in our community, we thought we could shout it out. Mm-hmm. We would send uncle to the attic. He couldn't come down, especially if he had schizophrenia. He definitely couldn't come down. If something happened, somebody got pregnant, we send him down south. But now we don't have the room down here, so we got to send him back up north. But all of this is happening. And so now we have to go to the church, because that's our resources at church pastors. Hey, you got to teach your ministers, you got to teach your missionaries. If someone calls them and say, look, I feel like taking my life, there's no hope, there's no meaning to my life, you got to call 911. Because the church and the pastor will both be liable if the last call was to you and you didn't do the right thing. So no, you cannot pray away depression. Yes, you can use a biopsychosocial spiritual model. I do have patients that take their Prozac and they pray. I'll pray with them. I'm a Sunday school teacher. I'm an elder in the church. So I will pray with you, but you got to take your medication, because there is a part of the struggle of depression that if it grabs a hold of you too tight, it's going to be hard to shake. And the only way out is suicide.
Okay. Nicole, I want to ask you about self-care Saturdays. You were talking about that. So what kinds of things do you do on self-care Saturdays? Because we know so many caregivers, they don't even have time, to take care of, work and cooking meals on Sundays, and, because they work all week, and, they don't have time to even think about caring for themselves. They often don't go to the doctor like they should be doing. So what do you do on self-care Saturdays to help?
Well, thank you for that opportunity to explain a little bit more about our self-care Saturdays. Our self-care Saturdays are actually one of our evidence-based programs called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. It is, once again, evidence-based. So each week there is a topic or a couple of topics of discussion. One of the very first things that we talk about is, just as Dr. Owens had mentioned, what happens when the caregiver cannot take care of themselves. And so we have a video that we watch the very first week. Says that I am a caregiver, and it kind of gives synopsis of what all that means, who you're caring for, whether it is a sibling, neighbor, friend, spouse, or child. We all have something in common despite who we might be caring for. And then one of the things that we have in common is that we neglect our own selves and our own lives, and we put them on the back burner. So the very first week, we start making what is called action plans. What are you going to do for you? Not what you were told to do, not what you should do or recommended to do. What is something that you want to do? And whether it is read a book, go to the lake, take 5 minutes for myself and sit and breathe. What is it that you want to do for you? And each week we report back on those action plans, whether you completed it, partially completed it, I had to change it to something else, or I just didn't get to it. And over the course of those 6 weeks, as we delve into more topics, then they start to discover that each week we're going to come back, our leaders who are trained in that program, we're going to come back and say, okay, tell me something you did for yourself now. And so they kind of get put on the seat of accountability of taking care of themselves. But we know ultimately when they take care of themselves, they are better able to take care of the person, their care recipient. So some other topics that we discuss include communication, how to have that family meeting. We know you're tired and we know that you're the point person because you're the one who came to the class, but how to get other people involved. And a lot of times we do hear the complaint that my siblings won't do anything, or I'm the only person here because everybody else lives distantly geographically. So what do you do when you don't have anyone else to help you? And for some people, it's contacting our office and talking to another department in our office. We have a whole team of what we call intake and screeners, gateway counselors. Like that, you call that number, and our slogan is we're the gateway to community resources. So you call that office and it'll tell you if you just want to know somebody who does some home modification, because maybe it'll be easy if I got some things modified in my home or in their home. So you can just call and get a resource. Maybe you need more than just resources. Maybe a hot meal will help you out so you don't have to worry about, is that person going to eat lunch during the day? So maybe there's Meals on Wheels that you need. Or as Dr. Bowles, I believe, mentioned, maybe respite care. I heard her mention about respite care. And maybe it's not every day. Maybe it's just once a month. And that respite care will provide you with a huge break. But perhaps you are so involved and the care is so intensive that you need respite care 3, 4, 5 days a week. Maybe you need it 7 days a week. Perhaps you need a adult day health facility somewhere, as he mentioned, check their background, but somewhere where you can take your person, drop them off, or even get transportation to come out and pick them up for a couple of hours during the day. So there's lots of other resources that are available at our office. Our hardest job is just to get people to know that we are available in the community. And so call us because we want to help, even if it's just, I mean, we've had people come in on the edge, just really on the edge. And as Dr. Owens mentioned, you have to provide the right type of assistance. So we have the crisis line that we can help connect people to, even if it's a 3-way, what we call a warm transfer. We dial that number for you, stay on the line with you, because sometimes I've tried 6, 7, 8 numbers before I get to you. And I don't want to have to hang up and call somebody else. And so we do what is called warm transfers, connecting them with the resource that they need staying on the line, because people cannot stand to wait on a line, that automated circling you back around and around. So you have a warm body to talk to while you wait, just chit chat with, and then once that other person picks up, we disconnect the call and we know that you made it to the right place.
Oh, I love that. And I love the accountability piece as well, that, you are going to have an action plan. And I think I hear something in there about how, even if you're not able to connect to you all's resources, that's something that girlfriends can do among each other, even sorority sisters can do, which is to have that conversation about taking care, what is that one thing you really do want to do? Because maybe it's just, maybe it is just a 15-minute nap or just quiet time, and be able to have that time. So Dr. Bowles, do you get to have that time? And how did you do it, if you do, and what does that conversation look like?
Oh yes, I have been delivered. I just got back Saturday from Cancun, Mexico. I was gone for 5 days and my child was not with me. So I had to grow to that area though. As it has been said before, you have to get family support. For me, no one in our family had ever had cerebral palsy. Nobody knew what it was. I had to figure out what this means. What does this look like? And I was afraid to kind of let go and let people help me. But it's a huge deal to allow your family. And as Nicole said, sometimes it's, well, no one is helping me. Sometimes it's because you haven't asked for help, because you want to do it all yourself and you haven't invited people in. I did have to use some services. I don't know if it was Dr. Owens or Nicole who said it. I've lived in 4 different states with my daughter. I've lived in Georgia, Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. And it is difficult. And if I could have a second job, it would be to help families find resources, because sometimes you don't know from state to state what is provided. But here in North Carolina, there's a program called CAPC. I don't know what it stands for, but she has Medicaid, and she gets disability services medically. My income doesn't allow her to get a check, which is fine, but Medicaid covers all of her medical needs. So they pay for her wheelchair. They do home modifications. We got a ramp built in the front door so she could come up the steps. We were able to modify the bathroom so that it's handicap accessible. They do provide funds for a CNA. So she gets a CNA services several hours a week. She comes every day to help me get her ready for bed. And as Dr. Owens was saying, that helps with the physical strain. I can do it, but every day I don't have to, and that is very helpful. We also get a bucket of hours for respite. So when I take trips and things like that, there is someone that they will send who has been vetted, Dr. Owens, as you said, and background has been checked, that I trust, that she knows, they've come to get to know us, and they provide those breaks. So it is definitely important, and it's definitely needed. And I feel better that I can have some of me. I can do some of the things I want to do by myself. And then I can come back and be a parent too. And I had to I had to be okay with that within myself, because a lot of it was self-inflicted. Like I felt like this is my thing and I have to do it by myself. And that's not true. I have a family who loves me. I have a church family who loves me. There are medical professionals who love my daughter and take great care of her. But you have to find those resources and allow yourself to use them.
Mm-hmm. So the area agency for aging caregivers, is that online? Resources are available online, Nicole?
Yes, resources are available online. You can just look us up. And like I said, you can do one or two ways. You can look up an area agency on aging, or you can look for the elder care locator. All of them will point you back to your local region's phone number and web address, so you can get in touch with them, see what programs they have. The core of our programs are the same, but we do actually go out and do public hearings. And so some areas, their services may be a little bit different. Like she mentioned, transportation. Some may provide some transportation more than others, or some may provide more homemaker services or more respite services. So it is built around what is discussed in the community that is needed, but they are available nationwide.
Okay, all right. Dr. Owens, how do you take care of or convince someone who is seasoned, an elderly person, to give up their property that they work so hard to obtain and then move in with you or move into, into care? How do you, I think you were the one mentioning that.
Well, sometimes you have to use a little bit of chicanery, but it is. I have a funny story. I remember one of my church mothers. She went into the nursing home, and they told her, and she would save all of her checks from her deceased husband, and she would even cash some of them. So she went into the nursing home, and she was sick, and she told me that I had to come see her. But by day 31 in the nursing home, you have to all of your assets have to be either sold or because you have to pick up the tab because Medicare ain't gonna pay for it. So when they told her that she had to give up her bank account, she looked at me and she put a wig on and she went headed for the front door. And at that point, that was 10 years ago. And I talked to her yesterday. She's 92 years old and she's probably doing better now than she's ever done before, but she was not gonna give up anything in that purse. So, but occasionally you have to have that discussion because it is, do I take care of my mom, my dad, my aunt, my uncle, or do I let them have this property? And I know the property is important, but I have to work. And the only way I'm gonna be able to give you that around the clock care is I've got to hire somebody. And some of the CNAs that are younger, that are, $8, $10, $12 an hour, you get what you pay for. So you have to get the quality of care that you want, you may have to spend a few more dollars. Now, 9 times out of 10, once your parent or your mother or father moves out of that house, if nobody's in that house, it's gonna take more money to keep an abandoned house up than if you're living in it. So you have to make some hard decisions. And that's where this thing called power of attorney, surrogate decision maker, living wills, all these things have to be done kind of like when like right now, we all should be looking at that whole process because as you get older, those things become real. So I think that there has to be a point person so that everybody doesn't bombard the parent, that has that ginger discussion and say, Dad, Mom, we could do more for you if we went ahead and relinquished this property. And I think if you share it with compassion, I think most of our parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, they will understand. Now, if it's a tug of war and they feel like you are stripping them of their rights, taking their cars, taking their keys, because you have to do that occasionally, then it could become a problem and they could call the police and it gets to be a big mess. But I think if you gingerly handle it, I think, like there may be a couple of keepsakes in that house that they want. A brick, a piece of the floor, a piece of the panel. There may be something they want to hold on to that is historical for them. That becomes their transitional object. But then you need to move them to a safe place.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I never thought about that. A brick, a piece of it.
Leah, can I say something and add on to that too? And I think it's good if you can have those conversations before they're needed, because once they get into the place where they need to be swept away, it's a tug of war. But if we can talk about it now and say, Mom, you're getting older. Let's talk about a plan. If there comes a time when you need more support and I'm still working, what are we going to do? And we can make those decisions versus I wait until, something has happened. And then I say, well, now I'm gonna take your house and you're gonna move in with me. I think it's kind of scary if you do it that way.
Yeah.
And you go into a depression.
Yeah, true. So we have some other questions. Is there a difference between services provided by Medicare and Medicaid? And how does a person find out which services will provide which? So what will Medicare provide? What will Medicaid provide? Who wants?
Medicaid is usually for younger and disabled. Medicare is I think the age is 65. What you have to do is every year there's open enrollment. I think, right, isn't it open enrollment now, Belinda? I think open enrollment is going on now.
It is,
And
yes, it is.
so you have and the books are very difficult, but you may have to go to Nicole and her team and say, help me. Because Nicole and her team probably could tell you more than any doctor, any nurse, because what they've done, probably, Nicole, is they have went through the book and they know all of the resources. Because a lot of people don't know that you can have home health aid, like Dr. Bowles was telling us. There's a lot of hidden secrets in your insurance. Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, Medicare, and God forbid you have a supplemental insurance. There's a lot of hidden jewels in that insurance. But a lot of time our elderly, we don't read those insurance policies. But I will go to definitely like the Department of the Aging, like Nicole was talking earlier. There are people there that could go through that with them. They're specialists. But Medicare is usually for 65 and above. You can get Medicare if you on, I think it's SSD, Nicole, Social Security Disability. They'll swoop down if you have Social Security Disability and pick you up. But Medicare is for the disabled or more of the elderly, and Medicaid is for the younger disabled and the younger people who are below a certain poverty level.
So when making hard decisions, how does a caregiver reach peace of mind when making those decisions, such as ultimately having to place a loved one into care? How do you begin to make peace of mind with that?
That gets to be a tough one, because there's a cultural issue that we have, is that in our culture, we don't put our parents in the nursing home. And if you do, you are looked at as a bad person. But I think if you do your research, if you get like Nicole's agency involved, because I'm sure that Nicole has a book with all the bad agencies and all the good agencies. Look at their ratings. Now, you got Google reviews and all that, that's personal, but you can always go and look at the Joint Commission Accreditation or DMV, whoever accredits that organization. They will tell you about stuff like infection control, how they did during COVID. Everybody did not have death during COVID. Now, there's a couple of chain of nursing homes down in this area that had a bad breakout. There were a couple in Atlanta that had some bad breakouts, but there were some that didn't miss a beat. So you want to really look at stuff like meal planning, care for diabetics, and the fall score. Somebody mentioned falls. You want to find out how many falls that they have in that particular facility. Because if there's a lot of falls going on, there are one or two things happening. Either everybody there is very, very sick, or there's not enough attention given to the patient. A fall for me or you, we get up, we feel better in a couple of days. But a fall for an elderly person can be life-changing. So falls, infection control, ratings from regulatory agency, formal complaints with the state. Look at what you see about those particular places. And then once you get a good feel, and if you can smell it when you walk up to it, you may want to go somewhere else. Because at this juncture, you should not smell the facility. I mean, that we're way past that. If there are a lot of infections going on in that particular, ask them the question, do you have an infection control nurse? Can I talk to her? You know, how did you do with COVID? Ask them the question. Did you have an outbreak? You know, and in a lot of cases they did. How did you handle the outbreak? You can ask them some very hard questions and interview where you're putting your mom and your dad, because you want to be comfortable. You can't do it. You got to work. So you may have to make that hard decision. But if you put them in a place where they're going to be happy, where they're going to have bingo on Thursdays, where they're going to have the card games on Monday, where they're going to go on trips and do things that make them happy and keep them happy, then you will feel resolved.
Here's another question. If a person needs a caregiver around the clock, is it illegal to keep that person in the home alone? So if a family member works and they need to leave their loved one home for, you know, a few hours while they work, who wants to take that one?
It's called adult protective. Someone, if I come and find you, I'm going to call and I'm going to report you. Because if anything happens and your mom falls, who's going to call the ambulance so they can get there in a timely fashion before they have an adverse outcome? So no, you can't leave your mom or dad for an hour while you go to the store. In that one split second, the house can catch fire. And then who's going to explain why you had to go to the store to get a carton of eggs? It's unacceptable. So if the requirement is 24-hour care, you need to be sure you have that. You don't bag out of the driveway until your child or your mom or your granddad, whoever it is, till that caregiver is in there and has eyes on that patient. You don't leave anybody like that. That's unacceptable.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we have so many questions. We could probably talk all night, but we are going to bring this session to a close. And I'd like to thank all three of you, Dr. Bowles and Nicole and Dr. Owens. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us this evening and sharing all of your knowledge. We so appreciate that. And now I will turn this conversation over to, who am I going to, Vice President? Am I going to Tanya? Tanya? Yes, I am. There she is.
Hello, thank you so much, Ms. Fleming, for facilitating this presentation for us this evening. This roundtable discussion has been very beneficial. And as an only child with aging parents, it is timely too. And just a personal testimony, my mother had been in perfect health pretty much her whole life. And this past summer, she had a health crisis. And it was scary. I just have never had to deal with that, She's doing better now, praise God, but it just was very scary. And I had to really face the facts that my parents are aging. I really had never really looked at them in that way until I had the situation this summer. So this has been a very timely discussion. You all have just provided a wealth of knowledge and resources that I just don't know if we could have gotten it any better tonight. Sora Belinda, you planned a wonderful meeting as the co-chair of the Target to Women's Healthcare and Wellness. And I thank you and appreciate it. And wow, Nicole, the resources that you offer, wow. So, and when I have friends who need help, I think I'm gonna refer them to you as well to say, hey, we have resources here. We just need to, we don't know what we don't know until we don't know that we don't know it. And Dr. Bowles, your testimony with your own personal child and then being a resource for others, that is just so telling. And I'm so glad to hear that you have taken time to take care of yourself too, because all of you have shared that tonight. And Dr. Owens, you just kept it real. My goodness. Thank you. We appreciate it. But ultimately, we do want to make sure that we provide services to our community that are beneficial and that I'm sorry, I pressed mute by accident, that we provide services to others. We definitely would like to have your resources. So Belinda, if we can make sure we have that and we can share on our social media platforms so that for others who may want to get in contact with our panelists, that they have that to do so. If you would take a moment and take out your phone and just scan this QR code. We want to hear from you. We want to know how we did tonight and how we can make this better and what resources that we can offer to you or how we can improve upon programs such as this. Because it's important that not only as an organization that we provide services for ourselves, but for you too as the community, because that's what we do. The purpose of our organization is to provide service to all mankind. And we hope through this presentation this evening that we've done just that. To our President Youmas, thank you for entrusting me to serve in this capacity. And we certainly, again, thank you for joining us again tonight. And finally, Sor Leah, phenomenal. Thank you. It is so good to see you. My goodness, it's been a minute. I hear you on the radio sometimes because I do listen to Georgia Public Radio often, and calms me. So, and so it's always good to see you and to connect with you. And we miss you in Epsilon Omega Omega. And it's great to see you. So with that being said, we'll close our program out tonight. But remember, the ultimate message in all of this is caregivers need care too. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a good evening.